We're going to jump into life from nothing. Life from nothing. Genesis 1:21 says, "So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing in which the water teems and that moves that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good." Saw that it was good. So our world wants us to believe that life was possible to come from nothing. And there was an experiment done in 1953, and it's called the Origin of Life experiment, that was conducted by Stanley Miller. And the idea was to recreate the early Earth atmosphere. So what were the gases that were existent, that were here during the early Earth? And so he took those gases and he put them into a beaker. He put them into some science equipment, and he was able to get all the gases that were believed at that time, methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor, put them into a beaker, and then sparked the gases, simulating lightning. Then what happened was 5 days later, amino acids began to produce. Amino acids are the basic building blocks for a living organism. So many scientists believe that, hey, this experiment proved that life could come from nothing. And I did a quick Google search. I went on Google and I searched Stanley Miller, and I went on a few websites. I'm talking 3 to 5 year old websites, and some as recent as this year. And all of them were teaching this as fact. Like this happened, this was fact, and this is how we possibly got life from nothing. Well, here's the problem with that. Is what science widely believed was present at the early Earth changed in the 60s. You see, science is always evolving, it's always changing. We get more technology, we're able to do more, see more. And so in the 60s, the geochemists revised their hypothesis of what gases were present at the early Earth. Originally believing that there was hydrogen, methane, ammonium, and water vapor. Well, upon further study, they changed and said, actually, no, what we believe, now no one's really sure, they're, educated guess, but they believe that actually there couldn't be hydrogen because or heavy loads of hydrogen, because it's so light it would escape into outer space that Earth's gravity can't hold it. So the gases that were more likely there were carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor. So what Stanley Miller does is he says, okay, well, I'm going to redo this experiment after this came out. It's like, all right, they changed, okay, they did more, figuring and studying, the gases and things changed, so I'm going to redo my experiment. So he redid it over and over and over and over and over and over. More scientists conducted the experiment over and over and over. Couldn't do it. They got absolutely no amino acids when they actually used the gases that were far more likely to be present in the early Earth. They could not produce anything. Yet, like I said, I went and I Google searched, and we have websites and places that are still teaching this scientific experiment as fact, but it has been completely debunked that you can't get it. That 2 of the leading origin of life researchers said and confirmed that Miller, he had the wrong mixture of gases. And actually, Science Magazine in 1995 said that experts now dismiss the Stanley Miller project experiment because the early atmosphere looked nothing like his simulation. Never has science ever proved that life can come from nothing. The experiment that has been taught in our schools for over 50 years is false. Has been completely discredited by real scientists. Now let's say for a minute, because you're like, well, Pastor, what about those amino acids that he got from the first mixture? Well, what about those? Then does that mean that, prove that life could come from nothing? Well, Dr. Jonathan Wells explains who has a double PhD, he explains these amino acids that he got and said may have got amino acids, but there's like 1,000 steps in between amino acids and a living organism. He says you would need to get the right kinds of amino acids and then link up with enough of them to create a protein molecule, and then you need to get enough protein molecules to link. Like, he says the steps in which it would take to get a living organism is insane. You couldn't do it. He says, in fact, what you could do, he said, you take and create the perfect condition for life, a living organism to live. He says, you create this in a beaker, you put it in. He says, and it is the perfect environment. And you actually put a living organism in it, and then you poke it and let all the perfect ingredients that are man-made that you put into it, says they die. He says, once you poke and kill that living organism and you allow it to all seep out, he says, they don't link back up together. He says, you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. He says, you cannot get life from nothing. You can't do it, and there's absolutely no concrete evidence that you can. So science, they can't explain where life came from. We certainly can, right? We know God created man. But science may not be able to prove where life came from, but nothing has been stopping them from trying to tell us how life has evolved.